So a really interesting development in this Prince Harry immigration papers case with the Heritage Foundation and the Department of Homeland Security. The judge has demanded that the department hand over Prince Harry's immigration papers so that he can decide whether to release them publicly. He said that the sensitive information in the immigration papers need to be handed to him so that he can review them, and said that so far the department's arguments were insufficiently detailed for him to make a decision. He's asked the Department of Homeland Security to make declarations as to what particular harm would arise from the disclosure of Prince Harry's visa application. The judge is saying that this review is appropriate when agency affidavits are insufficiently detailed to permit meaningful review of exemption claims, when the number of withheld documents is relatively small, and when the dispute turns on the contents of the withheld documents, not the party's interpretation of those documents, according to the order reported by our Daily Mail. Judge Nichols said, having reviewed the parties' written submissions and heard oral arguments on the motions, the court concludes that in-camera, which is in private, review is necessary to determine whether the records in dispute come within the scope of the claimed exemptions. So this is really backing the department into a corner, because it will not have escaped the judge's mind that there are only two possibilities, which we keep talking about when we talk about these documents. Either what is in those documents marries up perfectly with what Prince Harry has said in his books and in his interviews and so on, or it doesn't. And therefore, if it does marry up and he has admitted to all of those things within his application, then quite clearly he's been allowed into the country despite making those admissions. On the other hand, if he didn't put any of that information into the visa application, then either it was all made up in the first place, or he's lied on that application. Now, there's no suggestion yet that he has lied, and there's no suggestion he's done anything wrong as yet. That is why the Heritage Foundation are after these documents, because they want to see whether he's been given preferential treatment. And this, presumably now, is why the judge is backing the department into a corner, following Trump's message to say that he wouldn't protect him. And I do think there is some sort of cryptic message within there, because I do think that Donald Trump probably knows a bit more than the general public does about all of this, but can't say. But obviously what he does say from time to time does leak as to what he perhaps knows. Who knows? None of us really know unless we see these documents. And so the judge is backing them into a corner. The judge is saying, well, tell me, because there are so few documents, and it's not your interpretation of the documents that I'm interested in, it's what they say and the material within it, and why do you say that it's harmful? Now, you know I give my views on this channel. We're here on Black Belt Secrets, so please do subscribe. But my views on this, they do sort of ping-pong back and forth between people should have the right to privacy in those documents, and at the same time, if they are making virtually everything, every detail of their lives public by way of books and etc., and at the same time trying to maintain confidentiality over what would ultimately be the same information. I can understand those arguments of the Heritage Foundation to say, well, he's made all of this information public, and that is the information that ought to be contained within the visa application. Therefore, you shouldn't be able to rely on it. That's essentially their argument. And so the judge is saying, well, to the department, tell me precisely what it is and what harm you say it will cause to make these documents public, so that I can better review and decide. Because if it's something in there that obviously no one knows and shouldn't ever be made public and should remain confidential, etc., and it's nothing to do with what has been talked about in the books and the interviews and so on, then there might be a good reason. But the judge is saying, well, until I see all of those, I don't know. So the judge is backing them into a corner to say, well, tell me what the picture is. Tell me why you think it's so damaging. Let me see them and I will review them. And in conjunction with what you say about them and the documents themselves, I can look at them for myself in private, so the judge can do that. It's called in camera, meaning it's all in private and there's no media allowed in there. There might usually be a summary afterwards of the type of thing that's been discussed, but not necessarily the detail. And if indeed the judge ultimately rules that these are to be made public, then of course that information will likely come out at that point. And all of this is against the backdrop, let's not forget, of many others who have struggled with immigration issues because of prior use of substances. Nigella Lawson, Amy Winehouse, etc. have all struggled with immigration issues. And so the question has quite rightly been raised here. So this is where we are. We'll wait to see what report, if any, there is on the supply of these documents to the judge to hear in private and to discuss them. But I do think it's quite an interesting step by the judge to have these documents brought in. And I think in the interests of transparency and seeing both arguments, the judge, at the very least, is taking his time and ensuring that he can't be criticised, whatever he decides, whether he decides against the publication of these documents or whether he decides for the publication. He's quite rightly saying, well, I need to see all these, I need to see the objections in full. The detail is so far is insufficient as to why these exemptions should apply. And so the judge is saying, I want it all. We'll do it in private, but I want to see it all. I want to consider it all. So whatever the judge rules, ultimately, the judge then can't be criticised for not having taken anything into account. This is obviously going to head off appeals and further complaints and so on. So I, for one, think that is really interesting. Let me know in the comments what you think. Obviously, no one here has any intention to disrupt any proceedings. Those proceedings will go on by themselves, so there's no worry about that if you're just leaving your own comments for your own comments' sake. But with that, please do make sure you subscribe. About 60 to 70% of you don't, and that kind of hurts my feelings. There's a lot of people watch my channels, each of my channels, and don't subscribe. That's the one thing I ask. It's my one metric that I can hang on my wall, literally hang on my wall, because I have up here my play buttons. I would dearly love the gold one with 1 million subscribers for either one or both of my channels, but that doesn't happen unless you hit the subscribe button. So thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next time.